What is up, everybody? It is time for the second NFL Live before lock of the year. Last night, we had Thursday Night Football, and I cannot be more excited to be doing the Friday Night Football breakdown. My friend Chris Spags here. It's been a minute since we did a show together. We're going to be breaking down this Brazil game. We've got some already kind of oddly significant things that have happened as a result of the game being played in Brazil, potentially. Some faulty food causing the Chargers offensive line to be a little bit shorthanded. So we'll be talking about some of the implications of that. Do us a favor as you guys are watching. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you are a Stokastic sub and you've got any questions for Spags or I as we go through here, tag me in the Discord channel. I'm going to be on the lookout for any questions you guys have over the course of the show. Other than that, we're going to be running you through all of our favorite captain options. We'll look at DraftKings a little. We'll look at FanDuel, answer your questions, probably make fun of Eric a little bit. We're going to run the gamut. We're going to get everything done here. So like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also want to remind you guys that this is the final call for the $1 deal for the opener. So this is just for the Thursday night and the Friday night football games. And obviously this is the Friday night football game here. So if you want access to our Sims for just $1, sign up using the link down below in the YouTube description box and that promo code opener. And we already saw Spag some pretty good results yesterday. Day one of the season, we had a couple of people who won some GPPs, tagged us over on Twitter. And also shout out to Jerk, who I'm not being mean in any kind of way. That is what his name is over on Twitter. But he said right there, not a bad opener, $1 promo. And he turned that $1 investment into winning a lot of money over on FanDuel last night. So if you guys are on the fence about paying $1 for our Sims today, look at the results from our friend Jerk over here, who had pretty massive returns on his $1 investment yesterday. So if you guys want to go check that out, it is just $1 with the promo code opener. But also, if you're looking for a longer term package heading into NFL week 1, you can get 30% off any monthly package that we have here at Stokastic with the promo code football. So any monthly package you want to sign up for, 30% off with that promo code football. Spags, I want to know from you, just generally as we start to ease our way into the slate here, do you have any overarching or large thoughts about this individual game as a whole? Maybe something you think people are missing out on, or any sort of hot take or anything?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of large thoughts, I would say. In particular, this guy Jerk. I want to talk more about that. I didn't know Eric Lindquist had another handle out there, Greg. Get the Eric jokes out of the way early. But no, it's a fun slate. I think it's an interesting one as well, with KC having the 25.3 implied points in the spot. You know, it's kind of a high total for a situation where they are in another country right now. Great Brazilian steakhouses there, but apparently the run's going around. But for KC, the big kind of narrative from the offseason has been, and I felt this last year throughout the entire season, the offense was kind of underpowered. The defense was carrying a lot last year. The defense was also not as good as previous years, but Mahomes being who he is, the team being who they are, they got all the way to the Super Bowl, and then I would say kind of got exposed and really didn't have the firepower that the Eagles had on the other side. So the entire offseason, it's been about Mahomes is going to go crazy. He's going to be throwing it downfield, attacking more of that. And it feels like projection-wise, it's definitely pushing towards that as well, this narrative that the Chiefs are going to be a brand new outlook for everything here. Mahomes getting more into his Brady Bucks era, maybe getting some records down the stretch. And I'm not sure, Greg, how you feel about that, but I think there's real questions about, is this going to be the same kind of slog it out team of last year? No Rashee Rice to start the year? Or do they come out, slinging it like those 99 Rams? And I think, I'd love to see the latter, but I'm not sure it's there.
Yeah. My intuition is that last year was a little bit of a down season for Mahomes, and I almost think he's underrated at this point. I think that there is way more upside in the Chiefs offense than a lot of people are kind of recognizing. It would not at all be surprising to me if you see an MVP type season out of Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs kind of outperform expectations, just because it's the reason that the public has not like totally soured on the Chiefs, but the reasons that the public has kind of turned on the Chiefs are for very dumb reasons. It's like, look at how their season ended. Oh, what? They went to the Super Bowl and lost. So like now it's some sort of, like massive black eye on them. Like they were still the second best team in the NFL last year and the best team overall in the AFC. And then also it's like people are bitter because Travis Kelce is marrying, Taylor Swift. Like who gives a fuck? But still it's like people, it's the end of the world that Taylor Swift is occasionally on TV for, 9 seconds at a time during NFL broadcasts. So the overall reasons that people are down on the Chiefs, it's almost because the expectations were so astronomically high prior to last year, where it's like, oh, if this team isn't this no doubt dynasty, then they've somehow not lived up to the expectations that were just kind of given to them. Like, this is still a team that I think has the highest ceiling of any team in the NFL.
And I would agree. And I think if you get Mahomes being the guy that the prince we were promised, I think that's certainly the case. Last year, his, number of 20-point games, I think he had a few in the beginning of the year and then basically had none the entire rest of the season. That's kind of stuff does stand out in people's minds now. I mean, in best ball, I think I was doing here on Stokastic over the summer, his ADP was so much lower than it was the year before last. And I think there is sort of, a logic to it, but definitely today with the Sims, and I would say even competitor products out there, it seems like Mahomes is going to be very popular. So play of the day for sure.
Yeah, and we got a super chat here. This one is from Adita Pamidi. Sorry if I mispronounced that. I did my second best. I can't say it was like my absolute best. I could have looked up, how to pronounce your name, but I did. I gave it a B effort. But anyway, the question here is, if I run the Sims earlier in the day before final projections are uploaded, is it a waste? Should I wait until final projections before downloading lineup? So the answer to this is you could play around with the tools and do whatever you want earlier in the day. And sometimes nothing changes, right, Spags? Like, sometimes the information we have earlier in the day is the information we still have later on. But very frequently, little things do end up changing. Ownership moves around a little bit. Projections could change. Like, for instance, there is no Becton tonight for the Chargers. He is in the hospital with what appears to be food poisoning. So with that being the case, this kind of changes the outlook of the game, not in a major way, but in a little way. And these are things that are taken into account in the projections. It alters some of the data. So it's not a waste to play around with the tools early in the day and kind of, have fun, make some builds, see which players you like, which players you don't like, make some ROI boosts. But I would definitely want to make sure that you're playing your actual lineups with the most updated data. But it doesn't mean you can't play around with the tools earlier in the day. I know that's like that. We do the strategy shows earlier in the day. Spags, I know you do all kinds of strategy videos over on your Splash Play channel as well. It's fun. It's fun to talk about football. It's fun to play around with the data.
And frankly, it's important to do that prep work of understanding a slate in advance and hopping in and seeing what the Sims gives you. I mean, I know Laffy's done a lot of interviews with the guys who've won the most money with Stokastic products, or, a few of them. They talk often about they'll run the Sims. They'll then dock one guy a projection, boost another guy a little bit, see how that looks based on that first run of Sim data. So you do want to have things as updated as possible, like Greg's talking about, especially for a showdown slate where there could be inactives that matter a lot, a second running back being out, a receiver being out, things like that. The Vegas total moving, for reasons like we talked about as well with the offensive lineman being out. But really, though, just kind of, really wrapping your head around stuff in advance and not just leaving the Sim to be a last minute thing. I think is one thing, frankly, people miss sometimes in that Sim process.
Yeah. And by the way, last I saw, is Becton officially active? I saw he was in the hospital and questionable. I've just kind of been assuming he wasn't going to play. Somebody in chat said that he is active. Has there been an update on that? Let's see.
I haven't seen. I don't often have a lot of offensive lineman alerts my stuff, but I'd like to believe. I mean, the Vegas total hasn't moved, so that's ultimately what I would care about. But yeah, I haven't seen anything about it.
Yeah, let's see.
The NFL handles now. Yeah, he's active.
Look at that.
As of 28 minutes ago.
From 16 seconds ago, he is active. All right, so that is fresh update. I've been assuming all day he wasn't going to end up playing, considering he was hospitalized, but. Yeah, as of recently, it looks like he is at least active. That doesn't always necessarily mean he's playing, but at least for now, he's active.
Yeah, and certainly, Vegas total didn't move. I would assume they'll think it doesn't have a huge impact. I know it's one thing I've talked about a few times. The Football Outsiders back in the day, Aaron Schatz, DVOA, if you guys are familiar with that, obviously it's been referenced a lot on the channel. He would never move a DVOA number unless the starting QB was out. So I think that's generally how even an important offensive lineman probably doesn't move things too much for people.
Yeah, we got a question here. So yeah, that is my bad. I've just kind of been assuming all day that he wasn't going to end up playing. We do have a question here from Leander who wants to know, how do I use the contest archetype? See, on the contest generator, you're going to see the contest archetype slider. There's going to be a few different settings. There is the marquee. There's the low stakes, the high stakes. So depending what contest you're in, you could change that slider to best suit the kind of contest you're playing in. The way that I typically think about it is this. If you're playing like the Millie Maker, for instance, the flea flicker sort of contest, the $5 150 max, that's going to be your marquee contest. Then if you're playing some of the slightly higher stake stuff, like the 333 contest or like the $1,500 contest or something, that's going to be your high stakes slider. And then if you're looking at something like, say, the $1 contest, the 50-cent contest, that's going to be low stakes. So the reason that that's significant is because if you play enough DFS, you'll start to see that in the higher stakes, the fields are a little bit sharper. In the lower stakes, they're a little bit less sharp. And what that ultimately ends up meaning is the ownership's a little bit different because the super smart players are generally going to be playing the value guys more regularly. Whereas then in like the lower stake stuff, you get a lot of more people who are just kind of like throwing random shit in there. So that's the way you use the contest archetype slider, is just, move it around for the contest it is that you are going to be playing in. Let's start talking about some of the players on the slate overall here, Spags. And once again, I'm keeping an eye on the Discord channel to see what kind of questions come in. And we do have one right off the bat from Sally Sal, and he wants to know, what do we want to do with Kareem Hunt today? So we could start here by opening up with the running backs, because I really do have a little bit of a take here, Spags. And I think this is going to be Pacheco's backfield again this year. I don't know what you think is going to happen with Kansas City. Like, I know that Kareem Hunt towards the tail end of last year, especially after Pacheco had the fractured leg, like Hunt was their goal line back for a lot of the end of the year. He was also somebody who played a much more significant role than any of us were expecting when he first went back to the Chiefs. But now that you've got Pacheco being healthy, I think that he is going to be the guy in the backfield for Kansas City. So at $7,600, I know the Sims don't necessarily love him, but I actually like him, especially more so on FanDuel more than DraftKings. But FanDuel and DraftKings, I think Pacheco is actually the best overall running back to be rostering in this game.
Like, I think the preseason talk, the offseason talk was that Pacheco was back in the RB1 role. I kind of thought Eli Mitchell, who's on the team and surprisingly made the roster after a pretty bad camp, I thought he was more live to move up the roster based upon them paying him somewhat decent money that, you get for a guy who's been super injured, flashed a little bit. Mitchell really didn't show enough in the offseason. He's been safely behind Kareem Hunt. I agree with the thought about Hunt being the goal line guy and the guy they trust here the most. Last year, he had 4.1 red zone opportunities a game, including rushes and targets. It was a pretty good workload for him. I don't think Pacheco was great last year. Pacheco under a 5% avoided tackle rate, and Kareem Hunt, guys generally regarded as having no juice. He was a little bit over 5. So for as bad as Hunt may be, Pacheco, at least last year, was worse. But I agree with you that Pacheco's getting the first run out here. When I was trying to stack my lineups before the show, I got a little more Pacheco than I probably wanted. But I do think Hunt's the more interesting play for me in the high dollar tournaments, because if this offense does get the ball downfield, if they are attacking more aggressively in the pass game, I think that benefits Kareem Hunt a little bit more, the opportunities to get some easy carries within the 5-yard line. But if not, Pacheco's probably the one getting the majority of the work. And I think PPR sites on DraftKings in particular, I think Pacheco stands out a little bit more there because he'll catch passes that Hunt's not even going to be in the mix for.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing to consider too is Pacheco was hurt for a lot of last year, and it was a stress fracture in his leg. Like, it was a pretty significant injury. Is he going to be injury prone? But the safe bet is most running backs are going to be injury prone over the course of their career. But when can you expect them to be most healthy? Week 1. So going into at least this week, I feel pretty good about Pacheco starting the season healthy, and then we'll see what ends up happening, going forward. But my intuition is the same way we expected going into last year, that Pacheco is at least planned to be the workhorse back for the Chiefs. And then whatever happens in terms of how guys play and whatever happens with injuries going forward is whatever ends up happening. But I think Pacheco is going to have the first crack at it. And I think that this is going to be such a dynamic Chiefs offense over the course of the season. Like I said, I think they are going to be better on offense and have a little bit more upside than what they showed last year. Pacheco is going to get the first crack at it, and that is going to give him the best chance to succeed right out of the gate as well. So I like Pacheco for the first game of the season.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to get the first shot. I think that's the best way to say it. Like, if he's not effective, though, Kareem Hunt is a guy they definitely trusted last year. And I would argue he's better than Pacheco relative to at least as diminished as Pacheco was last year.
All right, let's see what else we've got here in Discord. All right, some questions about captain. We'll get to that in a second here as well. But just while we're on the topic of running backs here, we've gone over Pacheco. Is there anything else that is of interest to you in the Chiefs backfield for tonight? Are you willing to go to Kareem Hunt, who does have some touchdown equity at just $3,600? So he is relatively cheap. Is there somebody who you're looking to take a crazy punt on from the Chiefs backfield? What are you going to be doing with KC in the running game?
I mean, one thing that I think is a big thing for me, obviously, something that does a lot of best ball content. I think there is a best ball brain thing sometimes where people like the player in best ball. Brashard Smith is one that comes to mind here for KC. It seems like he's going to be active. He's a guy that people liked a lot. I never really saw the hype behind it, but I get why coming into week one, people carry that over a little bit. I do think, though, even with that being me pessimistic towards that best ball brain, people kind of thinking about late season plays that aren't going to be ready or projectable in week one. I think there's a world where Brashard Smith could maybe be useful, catch a pass. They were scheming him a lot of touches out there, and it happens a lot in camp and in preseason where it's like, oh, this running back is playing out of the slot. Like Tony Pollard in Dallas had done that before, ends up not getting used in the slot even a little bit. But the Chiefs are a team that's more willing to do that when you don't have Rashee Rice. There are some low ADOT targets to go around. So I think if you're doing a 150 max, a 20 max, getting a share or two of a Brashard Smith is fine. But I'm with you that Kareem Hunt, the touchdown equity there, I think stands out the most. I want more Pacheco. I got in my exposures before the show about 45% of Pacheco, 20% Kareem Hunt. I think that split feels about right to me for a 20 max. But, getting some Brashard Smith, I think in a 150 especially, you probably want to get some.
And then I also want to get your take on the Chargers backfield, where there was an erroneous report earlier in the week that Najee Harris would be starting at running back for the Chargers. We since know that is not going to be the case. Instead, it is going to be Hampton, who was one of the earlier running backs picked in the draft this year. If I remember correctly, second one off the board in the NFL draft this year. So you do have him making his NFL debut today. The game script, probably not entirely favorable with the Chargers being slight underdogs. And there's still a veteran presence lurking in the backfield there, Najee Harris. And one thing that I did just kind of find interesting, because this was the most I was ever into best ball in a given offseason, is I thought it was really interesting that Hampton really rose up draft boards after Najee Harris had the July 4th eye injury. And everybody's like, oh, this is going to be Hampton's backfield now. But then what happened is once we found out that Harris was going to be fine, he was going to be playing week one, it did nothing to Hampton's draft. Like, he stayed at the exact same spot. And I was just thinking from a logical standpoint, if the reason that Hampton went up a couple of rounds in drafts was because of the Najee Harris injury, how come Harris coming back didn't revoke that? Like, if the reason he moved up was because of the Harris eye injury, why did they not change anything? The whole point I'm making here is at 8K on Amari and Hampton, I do have a little bit of concerns about what his workload is going to be like in the very first game of the season. And then you've also got a lot of other good players who are kind of priced around. Like Travis Kelce's $8,600. Xavier Worthy is $9K. There's just a lot of guys in this price range that I prefer to Hampton. Do you see it the same way as me, or maybe do you disagree? Could you talk me into rostering him?
I got a little more Hampton, and I agree with you. The best ball logic. Sometimes the markets kind of price things in, double count things, don't ever correct on things. So I'm fully on board with that. But I think with Najee, the big thing is that he just wasn't there for all of camp. So you saw Vidal get cut on the team. I don't know if he made it back in the practice squad, but like they moved that RB room, basically recentered around Hampton. And he was a guy that was with the first team, getting those first RB1 reps, all of July, all of August when Najee blew his eye off with a firework. So for Hampton, I think he's really talented. Like he and Genty, this is a class where people touted a lot of rookie running backs, your Bashal Tutins, those guys further down the chain, people like a lot. But to me, it was like Genty and Hampton. These guys are kind of, if they hit the field week one, it should be wheels up for them because they're really talented. Hampton is a 3-down back, a guy that can do pass game work, commanded a pretty good target per route run at UNC. Also avoided a lot of tackles for a guy who's kind of DeMarco Murray sized, pretty big. So I like his potential. I think this is one of those things where I'm willing to buy in before we see it on the field. But I agree, Najee Harris is there, and like I barely played any of him. I got 4% in the semi-round before the show. I don't think I want to play more, but I agree that he's more of an inhibitor than it probably seems. And, it's pre-eye injury, but Najee was probably the best Najee's been in his career last year in terms of actually avoiding tackles, being efficient in EPA and all that. So if you don't like Hampton, I think you could talk yourself on the flip side. I like Hampton, so I'm going to talk myself into it, but it probably is going to be more of a split that people want in either way.
I prefer Hampton to Harris. I prefer Pacheco to both of them. They're all priced kind of around the same range. I'm surprised that Harris is all the way at 7K for his price point. You got Harris at 7K, Pacheco $7,600, Hampton is 8K. Of those three, I like Pacheco the most, but overall, my real preference is rostering the passing games over the run games for tonight's bags. But if you're picking a running back, Pacheco is my favorite overall.
I got more Pacheco. I do like Hampton's talent more, but I agree, Pacheco. I have no concern about him, not getting that first shot at the job. Hampton, it could be muddied up more than you want to see because it is a rookie in week 1.
All right. We also got a question from Sally Sal, who asked, is Hunt playable in the 20 max? Yeah, Hunt is definitely playable. He's just not for a one-game showdown slate. The reality is pretty much anybody who's active is playable if you're playing 20 lineups. He's just not like my favorite overall play on the slate or anything like that. And I prefer Pacheco out of the guys in the backfield there. Zanjiro TV in the Discord channel says, if I was using the Sims tools for a contest under 20 people, winner take all on DraftKings, how do you set up the settings for best results for an optimal lineup? All right. So if you're just talking about a 20 people winner take all, I would use the single lineup Sims, and I would lean a little bit more towards the optimize function, where I would pick a couple of players you really like, then I'd optimize around it. You don't have to be building out, like a 10,000 person contest pool to simulate a 20-man contest. So I think for that, you're best off using the single lineup simulator, and just lock in a couple of players you like, use the optimize tool, maybe simulate it, see how it looks. But I wouldn't go like the full contest generator in Sims for just a 20-man field.
Yeah, it's a cash game with a little extra on top, I think. Mostly.
Pretty much. All right, let's talk some captains here, because I saw Captain Akel and some other people were asking us about captains. So we'll talk about captains, and we'll also talk about the MVPs over on FanDuel as well. These are going to be a little bit different across the two different sites, considering the PPR bonus. You can see here in the data, Spags, the Sims are really pushing towards Ladd McConkey. He's showing up in nearly 30% of the top 150 lineups that I favorited here. He's also only pulling 10% ownership. So you're kind of getting, not that he's like contrarian or anything, but it's modest ownership on Ladd McConkey. The chalk in the captain spot, that is Patrick Mahomes, pulling nearly 30% ownership. I actually do agree with the Sims here. I think this game script sets up pretty favorably for the Chargers to be throwing the ball a lot. And in that scenario, we know Ladd McConkey is likely to be the number one overall wide receiver for the Chargers in a pretty significant way this year. So with this kind of ownership on Ladd McConkey, I really do like getting to him, Spags. Who do you like overall as your favorite captain if you're just building one lineup on DraftKings?
I think Ladd's appealing for sure. I think my big issue with him is that having Keenan Allen in the mix, I think, does kind of muddy the equation a little bit more, where Keenan Allen was the best in his career the last time he was a Charger before he moved on to the Bears. And frankly, I know people think he's dust. People was at one point comparing Amari Cooper to Keenan Allen. Amari's retired. Keenan Allen was like spiking in a major way down the end of last season for a Bears team that was rudderless. I think he's still got some juice. So I think that'd be my concern for Ladd, but I think the captain ownership there, I certainly get it, but I'm getting a lot of the QBs at captain. I got a lot of Mahomes, definitely playing into that pass game, being more effective overall. Got a lot of Justin Herbert as well. These two guys, both around 25% exposure for me. Worthy, Travis Kelce, I got more Worthy, but I think those guys also fit. And then for lower owned guys, I think Hollywood Brown, going down the order a little bit, Keenan Allen, I think are kind of appealing options at less ownership. But to me, the QB is just coming up a ton here. Going to have 50% captain ownership between the two.
Yeah, so if there was no ownership to be considered, I would say Mahomes with rushing upside. I would like him the most as my favorite overall captain option. It's just he's so popular. You got more than a quarter of the field playing him in the captain spot. And then when you think what that could look like in small field or smaller field stuff like single entry, then you could get maybe even north of 30% ownership going to Patrick Mahomes in those contests. He's not a bad option by any means. I mean, he still shows up at 16% of top lineups here. So he's the second most rostered captain in the Sims. I just like the ownership discount that you're getting on Ladd McConkey. Puts you on a little bit of a different lineup build with him being marginally more expensive than Mahomes as well. But really the main driver to me to go to McConkey is he's a third as popular as Mahomes is.
And I think, too, for my concerns about Keenan Allen, like we kind of saw the same thing happen yesterday for Dallas, where to me, George Pickens coming in, it's like that should upset the target share, and maybe it will, more over the course of a season. But in terms of game one, it was just the star player, the alpha target earner being fed a ton, and that's still Ladd McConkey in the offense. For KC, I think you could question it a little bit more about who's the alpha target earner. It was small sample size stuff. Like a lot of guys have kind of performed at different levels there.
Yeah, it's always hard to the drop-offs are so precipitous in NFL compared to some other sports. And I think there's multiple reasons for that. It's weekly games. A guy loses a step and they just fall off so quickly. Like Lofty and I were very briefly discussing Amari Cooper at the top of yesterday's show, where Cooper was one of the better wide receivers in the NFL like 2 years ago. And he showed up to camp, went through a couple of practices, and like, oh, this is not for me anymore. It happened very quickly. I look at some of the receiving yard props for Keenan Allen today. His over-under is 39.5 yards, which to me kind of indicates like sports books also are looking at Keenan Allen like, we don't know what to do with this guy. Because like the 39.5 mark, I would kind of be surprised if that's just where he's at for most of the season. I think he's either going to fall way short of that and just be a guy who isn't able to stick on the field, or to your point, maybe he has some juice left. And then all of a sudden he's a guy who it's like, hey, look, Keenan Allen's still a 1,000-yard receiver when you put him in a more competent offense compared to the kind of mess that Chicago was last year. So I view Keenan Allen as being a pretty interesting GPP play. I still like Ladd McConkey the most overall. I'm not all that concerned about Keenan Allen cutting into the production of Ladd McConkey just yet, though.
I think that's totally fair. It's honestly, I have some love for Keenan in the priors, and I just don't think he was dust like Amari Cooper when he went to the Bills last year. Like that was a player who had nothing left. Keenan Allen had multiple 20 fantasy point games on the stretch of last year. He carried a lot of teams for me in best ball in particular that he had no right to carry. So I think for Keenan, I'll hold him in esteem, and I'll always remember the good days of the Chargers. But definitely, it's Ladd's team now, and they should move him in. I mean, he should be playing on the slot first and foremost too, which is a big thing for him as opposed to playing out wide.
All right, so let's also go ahead and look at the FanDuel side of things, because this is really where there's the biggest differentiator between FanDuel and DraftKings when it comes to that captain versus MVP spot. Now, it's not as different this year as it was last year because FanDuel has changed their format to make it more in line with DraftKings, at least in terms of the pricing being 1.5x for the MVP as opposed to just being the static price, which resulted in thousands of dupes every day, which made it not my favorite format. I like the new format quite a bit better, but still we have the only half point PPR as opposed to the full point PPR. So what ends up happening is the running backs end up looking a little bit better on FanDuel. The quarterbacks end up looking a little bit better on FanDuel. And then the pass catchers take a little bit of a haircut in terms of how good they end up looking in the Sims here. But now with all that said, Spags, I was just talking about how, the guys look different as far as the pass catchers go and whatnot, but it's the same three most rostered players in the Sims for the MVP spot over on FanDuel: Justin Herbert, Ladd McConkey, Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes just over 30% owned over on FanDuel, showing up in 15% of the top lineups. Then you got Justin Herbert showing up the most for us in the Sims, over 30% of top lineups with him compared to the 19% projected ownership. And then Ladd McConkey looking like a contrarian option, pulling 6% ownership with a 17% overall exposure across the top 150 lineups I favorited here. So I want to know from you here, Spags, with the pricing being a little bit different over on FanDuel and the ownership a little bit different, Mahomes even more popular here. If you were just building one lineup on FanDuel, who'd you put in the MVP spot?
I might go the way of Travis Kelce. I just think he still has the touchdown equity. And, look, he's got, as Greg talked about earlier in the show, he's got $1 billion wedding coming up. It's going to be a big distraction throughout the year. But in week one, he's probably the least distracted he's been. He's riding high on all the love in the air. Really, the big thing for me is the touchdown equity he had last year. And I know there were parts he started slow. When Rashee Rice went out, though, you saw him come back to being a key part of that offense again. And on the year, he had 1.7 red zone targets a game. That's a really good workload for any tight end. But on the slate, he's also the receiver who gets the most red zone targets in the game. So to me, Kelce, worthy as well. He got 1.4 red zone targets a game last year and did have a role that evolved when Rashee Rice is out at the end of the season. I think for worthy, he would be my second choice. But Kelce coming up at 3%, expected ownership or 3.5%. It feels light to me given the new format of FanDuel where you have the 1.5x.
So for me, I'm going to go to Isaiah Pacheco here at just 4% projected ownership. I really, really do like going to some of the potential touchdown upside guys at the running back position. So last night, when Loft and I were talking about some of the multiplier options, one thing that I did bring up when we were talking about it is that I thought Javonte Williams did look better on FanDuel than he did over on DraftKings. He also ended up being insanely popular last night, more so than I expected him to end up being. But I do think you could see kind of a similar sort of game from Pacheco in terms of when the Chiefs get down to the 1 yard line. I think a lot of those opportunities are going to go to Pacheco to open up the year. Even if they did go to Hunt down the stretch of last year to start the year, I still think that is going to be Pacheco's first opportunity to get those looks. And then if he doesn't convert on them, then Hunt comes in, and maybe if Hunt is just more successful early on in the season, then throughout the year maybe does become the goal line back. But at least to open the year, I think it is going to be Pacheco. He's also modestly priced. He's $13,500 in the MVP spot on FanDuel. So you're saving a lot of salary with him. And that does a lot that you could do with your lineups, not to mention the ownership savings that you're getting there. So I want to be contrarian in some of those single lineup fields. And over on FanDuel, I think Pacheco really does stand out a little bit for those reasons. We've got Emac leaving a super chat. He wants to know, can Puppet Lindquist sing Love Story, please?
I don't know. Love Story. What is that? Is that some old man song?
I assume he means, so the opposite. This is Emac trying to, because I believe he's talking about the Taylor Swift song. So
okay. It's like, that sounds like an older song. I don't know Taylor Swift songs offhand. I'm subjected to them a lot in the house, but I don't have that. I mean, I have to really look up the lyrics and get there. And that's not a super chat either. That's not, Emac's doing that for free. I don't know. We don't do that.
Well, it's sort of both, because he's a YouTube member, so he gets it. I will not subject you to this. We've got 29 minutes to talk about football. Like, Emac, what do you think's going to happen here? I mean, just consider that we know that the general football fan base can barely survive Taylor Swift being on screen during a football game. What they might cancel the NFL season if Spags starts singing some of her songs on these broadcasts. They might not be able to carry on with football games.
Yeah. Also, Puppet Lindquist would be so on the nose vocally that it would probably get copyright struck. We'd get the channel taken down. She'd be like, "Oh, this is now Puppet Lindquist's version of Love Story," and she wouldn't have that.
It's something. This is probably more of a actual Eric Lindquist thing than Puppet Eric Lindquist thing. But I have heard rumors that real Eric Lindquist does play that song while looking at himself naked in the mirror and maybe touching himself. So it's
with his genitals tucked away like Jane Gum in Silence of the Lambs as he dances around.
We all have different pastimes. We all have different ways we entertain ourselves. That's what Eric does, 7-8 times per week. Let's see what else we have in Discord. No other questions at the moment. I want to shout out our sponsor here for a second, because I'm pretty excited about this. It was something that Lofty and I talked about on the strategy show earlier, and we're now working with Epic. This is a new pick'em site. It's peer-to-peer. But what is most important to me about Epic as a product, Spags, is it's built by Matt Downs. If you guys follow Matt Downs on Twitter, you know who he is. If you're not following, you probably should. He's almost 100,000 followers on Twitter. He's somebody who's been in the betting space for a while. He's built actual betting products, but then also on top of it, he's somebody who's a gamer. So he's somebody who's in the fantasy space. He's been in the betting space, and he is now building a pick'em product that is built for fantasy sports players and bettors, for people who are actually in the space. And this is what I think is something that's really needed in this space, is some innovation, Spags, and some cool products that are built by people who actually understand the space. So the most important thing that he's solving for is one thing you see constantly at some of these pick'em sites and really any kind of gaming site, is a lot of it is versus the house, and there are limits that are involved in it. So what Matt did is he set up a peer-to-peer gaming service where you don't have to worry about limits at all. It's just you against other people who are also building out, unders, overs for individual players. And as a result, you could play against people. You don't have to worry about any kind of limits. There's also different tournament settings. He's doing some really cool stuff with it. So I'm excited to be working with him and to promote a product that I think is going to be innovative and cool to the space. And if you guys sign up right now with the promo code ODDS1, you get a 100% deposit bonus up to $50. So deposit $50, get $50. And I want to be working with more companies like this that are putting out cool things that I would really want you guys to be playing. So if you haven't checked out Epic Fantasy, I could not recommend it highly enough. Go check out Epic Fantasy. And also, go follow C. Matt Downs over on Twitter, because he has a lot of good information that he gives out there as well.
He's got some good tweets, which I saw because he followed me after I was on the show with Lofty the other day. And I'm like, oh, Matt's going after it. So shout out to Epic. Good site to play on, and playing on these sites, take advantage of the bonuses and all of that. And frankly, some soft lines on there. Still Matt's sharp, but he can't police every line himself. So I think Vlad McConkey, 5.5 receptions. Looks pretty good. I
do have a question for you, because I've just got some of the numbers pulled up here. Who do you like the most to score touchdowns today? If you were just picking one guy to get on the board and score a touchdown tonight.
I haven't looked up the odds for it because I didn't place any prop bets today, but I would say for me, Kelsey. I just think the touchdown equity was there for him. The share of the offense is there for him a lot when Rashee Rice went down. I think people kind of kind of filed him away as washed last year. I think the odds are probably not so juicy for him, but he'd be my pick if I had a gun to my head.
2.4x multiplier and Isaiah Pacheco to have a rushing touchdown. That's who I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with Pacheco. 2.4x is the multiplier on him to find pay dirt today on the ground. So Isaiah Pacheco, that is going to be my pick for Epic Fantasy for today. Let's talk about the quarterbacks for today. And we've looked at the quarterbacks a little bit overall. We've gone over what some of their captain exposures and MVP exposures are in the Sims and some of the ownership there. So I think there's a much easier case to be made for not going to one of the quarterbacks in the MVP spot. But Spags, I find them very difficult to get away from in the flex. You see here in the Sims, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, they're both showing up in more than half of our lineups in the flex spots. I feel this way all the time about these single game slates. You can make a case for maybe getting away from one of the quarterbacks, but almost always you're going to see one, if not two of the quarterbacks be in the winning lineup in at least some way. So my preference, especially if you guys are playing cash games, do try to fit the quarterbacks into your lineups.
Yeah, I think too, even when you up the variance, you get Herbert in even more. Like it was at that point, pretty much unavoidable for those guys to make a line of both Mahomes and Herbert. I am favoring Mahomes overall. Ended up with 85% Mahomes compared to 50% Herbert between all the spots. But I think both guys, credible cases, and the projections too for both are pretty strong. And frankly, these guys as well, like a lot of pretty split target shares in their offenses. Obviously, we like Ladd; he's done pretty well. But if there's any concern about Keenan Allen coming in there, it could be pretty split target shares with both teams.
Do you have a preference between the two quarterbacks, at least as far as the flex goes? They're comparably owned. They're comparably priced as well. Herbert, Mahomes, I kind of get the sense you're leaning towards Mahomes, but tell me if I'm wrong there.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just all Mahomes today. Like I'm willing to buy in on the Chiefs kind of being explosive today in the hope that that's right. And if they're not good today, and if they look like the team from last year, then I can kind of, all right, we're back to how I viewed the Chiefs previously. But I think Mahomes in this spot, again, nice total for them. I'm buying the camp hype. It does seem like there's been a real meaningful amount of talk from beat reporters about them coming out aggressively. Herbert's great, but Mahomes, I think more so in the playoffs, but some touchdown equity to run the ball. He does get about 0.6 red zone rushes a game compared to 0.4 for Herbert. That's not much to make the sales pitch, but feels like Mahomes has more theoretical rushing touchdown equity as well. So he's a captain play for me of great note and a lot in the flex as well.
Let's talk about the pass catchers, because this is where there's a lot of good guys to be choosing from. So I've kind of already made, I've tipped my hand a little bit because I said I like Ladd McConkey the most as a somewhat lower owned MVP, or I should say a captain option over on DraftKings. Okay, in the MVP spot on FanDuel. I prefer him on DraftKings, though, because of the full point PPR. But there are a lot of high upside pass catchers that we have on the slate. We've got Ladd McConkey. You got Xavier Worthy, Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce might have one of the widest ranges of outcomes of any players in the league this year. If I told you, Spags, that he was the number one overall fantasy producing tight end this year, I don't think that would be like the most stunning development to ever happen in the entire world. Travis Kelce, for all the talk about him regressing, he's still a tight end who in 16 games last year had over 800 receiving yards, just didn't find the end zone quite as much. So I don't think it's the most, clearly Brock Bowers would be my favorite pick to be the leading tight end scorer. But if Travis Kelce had a resurgent season, it wouldn't be stunning to me in any kind of way. But it could go the other way as well. At his age, talk about retirement. There's certainly the possibility that Travis Kelce this year ends up 600 yards and 3 touchdowns. We see even further aggression from him. I want to know, do you have any particular takes on what you think is going to happen with Travis Kelce this season?
I mean, I just know for last year, I think people really soured on him in particular because his role was diminished when Rashee Rice was playing. But after that, he ended up finishing the year 8.3 targets a game. So we're not talking about too far off where he's been historically. Efficiency was definitely down a little bit, only a 0.13 EPA per target. But the 1.7 red zone targets a game, that's really one of the better receiving, touchdown equity roles in football. He's not going to be as explosive for sure. The yak stuff isn't going to be there as much as when he was younger. But I think he's a strong play in terms of ownership. I do have him equal to Xavier Worthy today, but I really feel like for Kelce, if people are going to hold the priors against him, I get it. And you play some Noah Gray for a showdown. If you're doing a 20 max or a 150, I think that's fine too. But Kelce still have the numbers there. And I agree with your take. I think tight end 1, it would be a certain narrow outcome where you get McBride and Bowers banged up or something. But, game to game, 8 targets a game at tight end is a lot of work.
Yeah. And so for tonight in particular, Travis Kelce, when have we seen showdown slates in the past where Travis Kelce's $8,600 in the flex? Like, I feel like the downside is kind of already priced there. And he's not all that popular either. We're so accustomed to seeing Travis Kelce be like 45% owned at 10 or 11K or something like that in showdown. Now he's a little bit lower owned and he's also a little bit cheaper. I think he's somebody worth taking shots on tonight for sure. And then especially with Rashee Rice out of the mix, at least to enter this. Now, I know that Rashee Rice missed the majority of last season as well, but still something to think about that there is, one less target guy for Patrick Mahomes in the offense. And he just has that, familiarity and long-term rapport that he's had with Travis Kelce. As far as the other pass catchers go from Kansas City, Xavier Worthy, a lot of people are thinking this could be a big breakout season for him, especially because he's going to get a head start on Rashee Rice to maybe really make a claim for that number one wide receiver role. It stands to reason that if Xavier Worthy's averaging, like 80, 90 receiving yards per game by the time Rashee Rice comes back, he might just be solidified as the wide receiver one for them for the rest of the season at that point. So you've got Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown's expected to get some extra work in the absence of Rashee Rice to open up the year. Who are you liking from the Chiefs wide receiver core as the actual wide receivers outside of Kelce?
Yeah, I mean, I think Worthy is the most obvious choice here. Really, when Rashee Rice went down last year, you saw his route tree expand more. Worthy, one of the fastest guys in the league right now. The deep shots were there from pretty much the entire year. He finished with one deep targeted game of 20 plus air yards. Probably should be better at that in year two because he wasn't terribly efficient. Neither was Mahomes last year on deep throws. But I think Worthy really solidified his role in the offense last year. Now having Rice out for the first 6 weeks to start the year, I think helps solidify it even more to start the season off. But I think Hollywood Brown's pretty interesting. The price I wished were a little bit cheaper because he really hasn't shown a tremendous amount. He only played a couple games in the playoffs last year. He basically disappeared entirely. The two games that he played last year, he had a 44% target per out run, very small sample size stuff. But the fact that he did flash that much in terms of target earning, had 7.5 targets a game, the two games that he played, it's a pretty concerted effort to get on the ball. So I think he's a guy, again, totally disappeared in the playoffs, whereas Worthy thrived. I would definitely have Worthy ahead of him. I would have Kelce ahead of him. But I think, Hollywood Brown, to me, a safe number 3. I'd put him ahead of Juju by a pretty good margin. And I think there's been some relationship built between him and Mahomes with that high of a target share, even in a small sample size.
And then on the cheap end of the Chiefs receivers, and then we'll talk about the Chargers pass catchers after this. Who are you most apt to be taking chances on the low end from the Chiefs wide receivers? Do you want to go to Thornton? Is it Juju Smith-Schuster, who at least for one game last year, I thought, oh my God, is Juju all of a sudden going to be back? Remember he had that one game where, how many receiving yards did he put up in that game? It was, let's see. I think he had a 100-yard receiving game. Might have even been in a primetime game.
It rings a bell. I feel like he had multi-touchdown game too.
Here it was. All right, here's what happened. Monday Night Football game against the Saints. Chiefs win 26-13. The wide receiver core is banged up. 7 catches for 130 yards for Juju. And then I remember the next DFS slate, they play actually against the same Chargers team. And Juju was still, I think he was min price for that slate because it was the Monday night game. The pricing already come out for the next slate. So you had a min price Juju coming off a 7-catch, 130-yard game. First play of the game, he pulls his hamstring and doesn't return. So it was one of those deals. And then he just never really got on track for the rest of the season. He had one game against the Falcons where he had 3 catches for 17 yards and a touchdown. He finished last year with 231 receiving yards, and 130 of them came in a primetime game. So, and for what it's worth, against the same Chargers team. The game he got hurt was against the Chargers team. Nix that. But you got Juju Smith-Schuster at $3,200. We know at least at times he's had a good rapport with Patrick Mahomes and it's led to upside. Are you willing to take chances on him for cheap today, or is Thornton your preferred cheap receiver to go to from Kansas City?
So I didn't get any Thornton, which I mean, I'm not surprised by. I got one share of Juju, which is enough for me, but I did not get Thornton to come up. It does seem like the Cant buzz is more in favor of Thornton. He had some quality speak from the beat reporters there. Coaches talking about him. He was kind of a long shot to make the roster, but they felt like he showed a little bit when he got put on their practice squad end of last year, came in, worked the team in the offseason, kind of got himself to a spot or they actually wanted to have him on the roster. I wouldn't mind switching my Juju share over to Tyquan Thornton. I just kind of got what I got. Actually, I got 2 shares of Juju, so I might switch one to Thornton because I think they're functionally the same play to me. Thornton hasn't shown anything as a pro. Greg listed probably the best case for Juju actually still being viable and having a job in the league with some of those stats, but he doesn't have a whole lot there to love. I think these guys sneak safely, very, very safely behind Hollywood Brown, Kelsey, Worthy. Those guys would have a lot of ownership too. But if you want to take a couple shares of Juju or Thornton, I think they're both equally credible. But the buzz definitely seems to be more on Thornton's side.
Yeah, so I lean a little bit more towards Thornton just because he's so cheap. You're getting him for $2,000 cheaper than Juju. Neither of them are like core parts of lineups for me or anything like that. Thornton did show up in a little bit of lineups in the Sims, but it's really just because of the price point being so absurdly low on him that, in a game like this, there's a lot of high price stars. It's not quite the same as what we had last night because there was, like Barkley in the mix also. So it's not exactly the same amount of, AJ Brown, who at least going into last night, we would have thought was going to have more than, like 1.6 fantasy points. So there's not quite as much of a need to get cheap for this slate. But if you are looking to punt, I think Thornton's one of the better cheap options you could possibly go to. Chargers pass catchers. We've already talked a little bit about Ladd McConkey. I guess you've shared some of your thoughts about Keenan Allen as well. But what do you like about the Chargers pass catchers outside of Ladd McConkey?
I mean, I think Keenan is the one to me, like if you're going to go to somebody that's not Ladd McConkey, I think Keenan's the one where if Ladd fails, it probably means that Keenan got a few more targets, a few more PPR points. I think there's also, frankly, a world where, the reports have been the Chargers are playing Ladd mostly out of the slot. I think if they play him out wide, he might kind of have been no man's land. He's a great route runner. I think a lot of the film bros like Ladd playing out wide, but results-wise, he only had 16 targets out wide last year. 0.1 EPA was not anything special compared to the slot, or he was very efficient with the 0.56 EPA, or 95 targets out of the slot last year. I think there's maybe some world where Ladd could fail, and in that case, going to Keenan and Quentin Johnson would look good. Trey Harris, I felt like wouldn't have shocked me if he were inactive, so I don't think I want to go that way quite yet. Even I thought he was really a compelling prospect playing with Jackson Dart at Ole Miss. Quentin Johnston, I think, behind Keenan Allen, but I want to get some shares there, and I did get a few. Let me check my exposure to that in a minute. But yeah, I prefer Keenan. Ladd McConkey, top of the pecking order. He's your alpha for sure. But Keenan and Quentin Johnson, I think, are both in play for me.
Yeah, Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnston, I think are interesting GPP plays. I wouldn't play if anybody is sadistic enough to play cash games for showdown slates. Wouldn't go down that route, but for GPPs, I think they have different appeals. If Keenan Allen is going to be similar to what he was back when he was with the Chargers in the past, I think he has the potential to rack up PPR points. Whereas Johnston, he's somebody who we've seen be a red zone target of Justin Herbert's in the past. So it wouldn't be surprising if he gets extra touchdown equity in this game. And he could certainly, end up doing damage by catching a touchdown pass or two. So like them for slightly different reasons to create upside, but both of them are viable GPP options for sure. I want to ask you about the punt options as well from this game. We touched on Thornton being very cheap, just over $1,000. Is there anybody for like $400 do you think is worthwhile?
For $200 or $400, I think might be a little bit low. Darius Davis was a guy I put in some lineups, but I think even he's a little bit more expensive than that. He is at 600. So I guess he's pretty close. Darius Davis, some opportunity on the return game to maybe add some value there at the touchdown. He also does have kind of a Kevontae Turpin-ish game, so I think he's there. Brashard Smith, the chat's bringing up. I mentioned him earlier. I don't really think there's a guarantee the role is there, but they certainly can scheme up some targets. Those two, I think, would be the cheap guys I would want the most, but not really sold on it. Matlock, I know pops up in some projections industry wide. I don't see how a fullback is going to play off much for the Chargers, but he's a guy. I think really for me, Brashard Smith, Darius Davis, I'd take that shot a little bit.
Yeah. So for me on the low end, I don't think it's all that necessary for this slate. Like I mentioned that I don't have an issue taking shots on a Tyquan Thornton. He does show up a little bit in the Sims, but I mean, you look at the high end for this slate, and this is once again where it's a little bit different from last night. There's not like a Saquon Barkley or anything like that who's uber expensive. The quarterbacks in this game, while Mahomes and Herbert, really good fantasy quarterbacks, they're not a fantasy quarterback the same level as say like what Jalen Hurts is. There's no CeeDee Lamb in the same way as there was last night either. So I don't think it's totally necessary to go all the way down to like the $400 guys. And then also you see in the Sims, a couple of them show up here. But last night, there was like, 7-8 guys in the Sims when Lofty and I had it on screen who were showing up in 5 to 10% of lineups who were sub $1,000 For tonight, we get almost none of those guys to show up in lineups. I think it makes sense just because of what's available on the high end isn't as good as what's available on the high end from last night. And that's even though we have low end guys that are actually projected better for this slate than how they were projected last night. And, it's not saying that much. It's like guys are projected for 1.2 fantasy points. But like last night, we had guys who were like projected for 0.4 fantasy points showing up in 8% of lineups.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. I mean, I think in a perfect world, your lowest man is probably like a Tyquan Thornton at 1,200. I think the tight ends as well. Seems like Gadsden's going to be inactive. Tight ends for the Chargers, vaguely interesting to me. Conklin's got a lot less money in his contract than Will Dissly, and Dissly actually commanded a pretty good target share last year. 24.2% target per out run for him and half a target in the red zone per game, which is not nothing for a showdown slate. I think in a perfect world, not having a ton of cheap guys would be the move and get up more to that price tier. But yeah, there's a few guys you could play for cheap if you need to, but I agree. You don't really need to.
Let's get back and see what kind of questions we're getting in Discord, if there are any. By the way, if you guys haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, final call for the $1 opener deal, because we've got the final primetime game for the, at least this part of week 1 until we get to Monday Night Football. But the $1 core deal, promo code opener, that is good for tonight's 1-game slate. Don't forget, we had one guy last night signed up for the $1 deal and turned it into some pretty significant ROI. Jerk. Once again, I'm not being rude to him. That's just what his name was over on Twitter. You can see his win right on the right-hand side of the screen here. He signed up for the $1 deal and immediately turned it into a 5-figure win. So if you guys want to be like Jerk, take advantage of the $1 deal. Promo code opener. That's going to get you access to our core Sims package for tonight's game. If you're looking for a longer term deal, promo code football, 30% off any monthly package that we have here over at Stokastic. So you get access to our player projections, our ownership, our Sims tool for an entire month. Get it for the NFL main slate as well on Sunday. So go check that out. By the way, also, since he's here, I want to let you guys know that Spags also is going to be part of the main show on Sunday. It is going to be myself building lineups in the first block. Then we got the deep dive with Lofty and Ben. And then closing us out is going to be Spags and Eric on Live Before Lock for that final 90-minute segment. So come hang out with us on Sunday as well. We did get a question from Discord here. Einsteinium wants to know if we are liking Trey Harris for today. So we actually have him projected for sub 1 fantasy point here over at Stokastic. Here's the issue with Harris for me. Unless there's injuries or Keenan Allen is completely washed, I think he's pretty low on the pecking order to open up the season.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's nice that he's low owned. Certainly if he somehow gets out there, maybe he passed up Quentin Johnston during this concussion period that Quentin Johnston had after getting hurt in the preseason. There's could be something there, but I think he's behind Quentin Johnston. I think Quentin Johnston is behind Keenan Allen. I think Keenan Allen is behind Lad McConkey. So you're talking about a few too many guys removed, even for a showdown slate. But, he was awesome at Ole Miss. I think he'll be good at some point this year. I don't think it's going to be right now.
All right. Is there anything about this slate that we did not cover? Do you have any kicker defense takes or anything like that?
I like the kickers. I got more Butker than I did Cameron Dicker, but 18% Dicker for me. Where'd I get with Butker? 27% Butker. I feel good about those numbers. Wanted definitely to get some. I think even if you're expecting the Chiefs offense to be good, they could certainly get the ball onto that side of the field and then kick some long field goals with Butker if the drive stalls out. So if you believe in the Chiefs offense being good, I think it still goes hand in hand with playing Butker. But the price tags aren't special today. I think kicker, I always make sure to play some kicker. Obviously the sim users know a kicker is always a key part of the slate, and definitely more than the defenses sometimes seem to be.
Yeah, if you look at what we are getting to in the Sims here, Chargers are showing up a little bit as a contrarian defense. Chiefs showing up in some lineups as well. Some of this is, too, that the cheap options are just kind of crappy. And then you get these defenses who are, pretty cheap. $4,000 for the Chargers, $4,400 for the Chiefs. But my preference is to play the kickers. Harrison Butker, Cameron Dicker. Between the two of them, I'm going to lean more towards Butker just because I do favor the Chiefs to win the game, and I think they're going to be the higher scoring team. Therefore, a little bit more scoring opportunities for Harrison Butker. So of all those options, the kickers, the defenses, Butker is my favorite of all of them. Super chat here. This one is coming to us, Spags, from
the Stars?
Yeah, the Stars themselves, Orion. Orion is saying for FanDuel, Ladd and Thornton with $400 left over, or Keenan Allen and Hunter Brown with Hunter Brown, Hollywood Brown. I still got
Baseball
a little bit
brain.
of baseball on the mind, but Hollywood Brown and Keenan Allen and $0 left over. So for me, I'm going to say the McConkey and Thornton side. Like, there's still more context that's needed sometimes, especially on Showdown for like 1v1 or 2v2 questions. But with that said, you're so much more likely to have a unique lineup with $400 left on the table than there is with $0 left on the table. And that, and of all those players, McConkey's by far my favorite. So I'm gonna go with option one. But how do you feel about that 2v2?
Yeah, I think I would prefer to get Keenan Allen in Hollywood, but I agree, leaving no salary on the table, those guys are fairly well projected and going to be decently owned on FanDuel. So I would go the Ladd and Thornton way as well. And any money you leave on the table in Showdown is going to make you slightly more unique. Doesn't mean you have to leave 9K like some people in the chat were asking, but if you leave any on the table, it just makes you fractionally more unique each time.
The most important question that I think we go over here, and what I like about this question, Spags, is that there's 0% chance for us to be successful with this question I'm about to ask you. It could only end in ruin for us. Who is the player who's most likely to ruin the slate for you? Who at the end of the day, you go look back and say, because I played a lot of him, he sunk me, or the inverse, where it's like, because I did not play very much of this guy, what ended up happening is he ruined my lineups because he went out, had a massive game, and he wasn't in very many of your lineups. Who scares you the most for today for either one of those reasons? Either you have too much of them or not enough.
I am lighter on Ladd today. I have Keenan Allen a little bit ahead of him, have more than a third of my lineups with Keenan Allen, a little bit less than that with Ladd. I do think Ladd to me feels kind of like CeeDee Lamb did last night, where I personally not the hugest fan of the guy, and I see a reason not to play him. But I know that the talent's there. I know the projection is there as well. So I'm under on Ladd, but I think that's the one that spooks you the most, is being significantly under on him and how he might play.
Yeah, it is Hampton for me. I like my assumption to open up the season is that he is not going to be a bell cow back. I think that Najee Harris is going to play a pretty significant role, and just all of the other guys priced around that range, I prefer to the Chargers running backs. I prefer Travis Kelce. I prefer Xavier Worthy. I prefer Isaiah Pacheco. So as a result, somebody like Hampton falls by the wayside for me. But if I'm on the wrong side of this and it ends up being that he is the workhorse back right out of the gate from week one, that could easily go very wayward for me. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, look, Hampton got 20 plus touches. He was involved in the pass game. And then all of a sudden my lineups are looking pretty sunk pretty quickly. So that's the one that I would say I'm probably most concerned about overall. And now also need to know from you, Spags, who wins today?
I mean, I think I have to go Chiefs. I just, if there's any shot they're going to be a good offense, I think they're going to show it right away in week one. But if they don't bring it, if they don't really try to get aggressive downfield, if they don't learn from the lessons of last year and playing it too close to the vest, the Chargers can win. But I would favor the Chiefs. I mean, the markets do too, so that's not brave.
Yeah, I'm going to be going with the Chiefs as well. I actually bet them a little while ago for this game. I think I bet them at like minus 146 or something like that. So I've got a Chiefs ticket I've been holding on to for like 2.5 months or something like that. So Kansas City Chiefs side, that is going to be for me. Also want to remind you guys before we sign off here that we are sponsored by Epic. And if you guys do want to go sign up for Epic, use the promo code ODDS1. Make sure you have the one in there at the end as well. Somebody I saw in chat was saying the promo code didn't work for them. It's probably because you didn't have the one at the end there. ODDS1, ODDS1. That is going to get you a 100% deposit bonus up to $50. Deposit 50, get 50. Easy deal right there. Easy way also to help build your bankrolls by taking advantage of these offers. So go check out the fantasy game that Matt Downs is building. I really hope that it turns into something big because like I was saying before, I think we need more smart people building cool, different looking products in this space for us all to be gaming at. So go take advantage of that offer. And then also the different deals that we have here at Stokastic as well. The $1 deal, that is about to expire, but 30% off any monthly NFL package with the promo code football. Take advantage of that as well if you're going to be playing NFL Sunday this weekend, which I think a lot of you are. And that is where you can see Spags and I next Sunday. Spags and I are both going to be on the big nearly 4 hour live before lock show. So go check us out there. I'm going to also be posting some content to my Twitter page with breakdowns for the slates on the weekend. I'll be pinning that with more in-depth breakdowns from the Sims. I'll do that tomorrow with some of the updated data on the site. Spags, any final plugs for you? Where can people find you before they head out?
Yeah, check out my YouTube handle at SplashPlayPod. I'm actually also now running streams through Twitter as well, so you can follow at SplashPlayPod if you enjoy watching videos on there as well. But I did a video this morning, my week 1 preview using Stokastic Sims, comparing some industry tools as well. Same thing Sunday morning, and then live before lock. I got a lot of content. Excited to see Eric. Right? I'm excited to make fun of him to his face, as opposed to us snidely doing it behind his back as always.
That's, I mean, I find all of them to be pretty fun if I'm being honest, but it is nice to be able to do it to his face, because you can see the sadness in his eyes, and that's what really, when you see them get a little teary. Oh my God, it's just fantastic. So yeah, guys, if you want to see a healthy dose of Puppet Lindquist, go check that out over on Sunday. That'll be the Eric and Spags portion, will be from 11:30 a.m. Eastern time to 1. So hope to see you guys there. Yeah, there's Eric in chat saying he hates everybody. Happy to see that he showed. It does seem that whenever you talk about him, he happens to find out about it and appears in chat. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. See you guys on Sunday, NFL Week 1. Hopefully one of you guys win $1 million at some point this week. Hopefully it's us, but if not, maybe you guys as well. See you Sunday, guys. Peace.